Hello and welcome to my studio. In today's video I'm going to show you a little technique you can use to reduce the effects of ambient light. There's various scenarios where you might want to do that, and today I'm going to demonstrate that with a portraiture session. For the model I'm using poly here, short for polycarbonate, our mannequin. And I'm going to be taking some portraiture pictures, just straight on, of her head, just to illustrate how you can use this technique to reduce the effects of all the house lights in the studio, or if you were doing this sort of thing outside, how you could reduce the effects of the sunshine. Okay, so what I've got set up here is at the back here I have a grey card which I'm just using as a background. Then we have our model. Then we have our camera, which is a Canon EOS 1DX Mark II with an 85mm 1.2 lens on it. This is tethered into this machine, which is running Capture One software. On the top of the camera here I have a flash trigger by Profoto, so I can control the various flashes. Okay, so to get started then, what I'm going to do first is just take a blank frame, basically just to see what effects the ambient lights are having at the moment in here. So if I just click on there we go. You can see that there's virtually no image there at all. This is at 100 ISO with a shutter speed of 250th, which is the sync speed for this camera, and at an aperture of f8. Well, all that is fine, but what about if I didn't want to use f8? What if I want to use a very narrow depth of field? Say, for instance, 2.8. So let's just put it on 2.8 and see what happens. Okay, so that's reset. Take another image. And now you can start to see that we are starting to actually record parts of an image here with the lights. So just to illustrate the fact that what I'm trying to do, I'm going to bring in yet another light to mimic what you might find if you are in a studio environment. So here we are. Turn that on. There we go. So with that on, if I take another frame, our model is now starting to be reasonably well lit without any flash. Obviously, I could reduce the aperture here. So if I take that back down to f8, for instance, and take another image, there's virtually no image there, which would, under normal circumstances, be fine. But I don't want to use f8, I want to use either 2.8 or 2, or on this lens I could actually go all the way to 1.2, which would give me a very, very narrow depth of field. And at 1.2 the whole thing is illuminated, and you can see that we have all the shadows, the light is coming from this side. Not really the sort of image that I want to take. So we'll put this back to f8. Like that. And I'll start bringing some of the flashlights in so that we can form a nice portrait of our model. So what I'm using here is a Profoto D2 mains powered studio flash. with a 4-foot octabox on it. Make this at head height or thereabouts. And just get it in relatively close. You should be able to see that there's more of this softbox in front of the model than there is behind it. And I'm doing that on purpose so that I end up with a feathered light coming across the model's face. Okay, so just make sure that that's not actually in the picture. Okay. And with that, we'll turn that flash head on. Okay. It's on a power level 5, so I'll just take a test. There we go. So we've got a bit of an image. Let's just have a little look. It's okay. It probably needs to come up ever so slightly. I might take it up a full stop just to see where we go. Yes, I think that's slightly better. We'll just check that for focus. Seems good. Okay. So that's the rudimentary beginnings of our portrait. With the black cloak, of course, it might be a nice idea to just separate that from the background. So what I will do is I'll just use this Profoto B1X. This is a battery-powered studio flash. Let's pop this up here somewhere, and we're just putting this behind the model, pointing at the background. Something like that. I'll just turn that on. Okay. Now I usually just do one flash at a time, so I'll actually just turn off the flash here, and we'll go for the one at the back on its own. There we go. So that's the sort of thing. We're getting a bit of a silhouette. Possibly need a little bit more energy. I will just take that up by one stop. There we are, that's better. So now if we combine both of those, I'll turn the other flash on as well. Fire them both. There we go. Well, this is all fine. It's giving us a relatively pleasant image, but we're at f8, therefore the depth of field in the image is actually quite large. I think you can actually see, if I zoom in here, that all the hair is in focus, all of the cloth on the hood is in focus. That's not really the sort of thing that I wanted to go for. So if I take the f8 aperture and reduce that to f2, for instance, which is 4 stops down. So if we just take the energy down by 4 stops, I'll do the one at the back first. And now I'll do this one. We take another capture. There you go. And I think you should be able to see that although the overall exposure is the same, we're actually getting quite a lot of bleed through of the ambient light. Just to show what that is doing, if I just take the flash heads and turn them both off, like that, and we take another picture, you can see this particular shadow. This is all caused by the ambient light in the room. Now normally you wouldn't really be able to do very much about that, but what we can do these days with modern flash equipment is use a technique called high-speed sync. So in order to do that, I'm just going to change the way the flashes are triggered. You can do this with most modern studio flashes and most modern speed lights. So I'm going to change the triggering from first curtain sync to high-speed sync. What high-speed sync will allow me to do is use a much higher shutter speed. So normally I had the camera set to 250th of a second, which is the sync speed for this camera. However, with high-speed sync, that no longer matters. So with the shutter speed, I can take that up to anything I like, really. So if I went to, say, 1,000th of a second, and we do another test, we're starting to lose the influence of the lights, but I want to get rid of them altogether. So I'm going to go to a 2,000th of a second. Very nearly gone. We'll go to a 4,000th of a second. And gone more or less completely. Now normally, if you were to try and use flash without a high-speed sync at 4,000th of a second, you wouldn't get an image because it just would not synchronize with the shutter properly. But with high-speed sync set, if I turn the flashes back on again, so I'll just turn both heads on, like so, and we take another picture. We've gone back to our image. Now you'll see that the settings don't quite match. So if I go back to where we were, that's what we had. That's what we have now. That is because in order to make the high-speed sync work, it uses quite a lot more energy. So the energy settings that you've had previously, you just need to adjust depending on what shutter speed you've gone for. So if I just start at the back and we'll just set up the background light, I will turn this one off for the time being. So I'll just turn that head off. So it's only the background that will fire this time. And there's very little there. So I'm just going to add some energy to that background. Let's go for maybe 4 stops and see what happens. There we go. We're getting back there now. So I have a little bit of a background glow. We'll see if that's enough. I will, for the time being, just turn off that head and turn on the other head and add a bit more energy to that. I've just increased that by 1 stop. There we go. That looks like a reasonable starting point. Perhaps I want to take it up a little bit more, maybe half a stop. I'll go all the way, I'll go a full stop up, and then we can always come down one. Yeah, so that's a bit over much, so I'll take half a stop off, like so. There we are. Yeah, so that's quite a good exposure. That's worked quite well. I just want to adjust the background light. So I'll just turn that back on again. We'll just assess where we are. We'll just fire them both. There we go. So you should be able to see there that we're getting a reasonable result. And this is at f2 in a very brightly lit room. So you can imagine what you can do with this outside. It is a very powerful technique. Just one other thing that I'm going to do is just to make this look a little bit nicer. I'm just going to add a gel to the light on the background. Okay, so here I have a gel and a reflector. So I'll just put the gel on the front of this light. I'm just going to put this reflector in just to concentrate the lamp a little more. Okay, right. So we'll see what sort of a difference that makes to our image. Oh yes, I think that's made a very nice addition. So here you can see that we're not getting any of the interference from the other light, and we're also getting a very nice background to the whole thing. And this has only been possible because of using high-speed sync. If I take this back to normal first curtain sync and show you what the effect would be, I will just reset the parameters to do that. Reasonable. I think perhaps the background wants to go down a bit. One of the things that you can actually see straight away, if I just flick between these two, that's the one with the high-speed sync, and this is the one without it. The actual colour of the background has changed. You should be able to see that it's become a bit more greeny. That's because of the colour balance change, which has been instigated by mixing the ambient light in with the flash. The other thing that you can notice from this is you've started to introduce this shadow, and there's a shadow on the neck as well, which has disappeared here because it's all been illuminated by the flash, whereas here it's been illuminated by the flash and the ambient light. Just to be fair to the whole image, I will just take that down a little bit more, just to prove the point. So we'll just take the background down by perhaps a stop. I'll just take the softbox down as well. We'll give that another go. There we go. And again, you can see the difference. Yeah, this is still a bit bright, isn't it? But a lot of contamination is evident there. So, if you want to get rid of that contamination and end up with a reasonable result without actually having to change the ambient light, which you can't always do. Obviously, you can do it in a studio. We could turn all the lights out, but then you wouldn't be able to see what I was doing. But you can't do that outside, whereas you can use high-speed sync to have a very similar effect to what we've done here. Well, I hope you found that interesting, and if you like to see these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much.